Hello from Wilmington, North Carolina. Welcome to today's Human Capital Matters series, an interactive business event and conversation focusing on developing and communicating the business continuity plan. I'd like to thank you for joining us. My name is Bo Birch, and I'll be your host and facilitator for today's segment. Please make note of the chat box. I'm sure most of you all are quite familiar with Zoom. Should you have any specific questions and comments, we'd like you to share them with our speaker today. Send them through the chat portal. Our firm, Human Capital Solutions, Inc., has dedicated an email established so you may forward your questions and comments also about today's topic to working remotely at humancs.com. I think we'll also have that posted. It's on the flyer, working remotely at humancs.com. Also, when you email us, we will reply back with a copy of Michael Pilnick's tips and the checklist for returning employees back to the workplace. Be sure to follow our LinkedIn page, Human Capital Solutions, for updates on our next Human Capital Matters segment that is scheduled for May 21st. There is a peek at next event. Three ladies, executives from Channel Advisor, I think up in the Raleigh area. Excited about that as well. So welcome again. Today, I'm so glad that we can bring Mr. Michael Pilnick on. Michael's career has been leading and driving business growth, financial results while improving asset value through the development and delivery of human capital strategies. He's a systems guy, operations and best practices. Michael has experience in high growth with established companies and also in turnaround environments. He's worked for Fortune 500 organizations, the Big Five consultancies across a variety of industries, focused in information systems, software and technology, media, and HR outsourcing. Michael's a high energy innovator, great reputation for moving businesses into the future through organizational transformation. Since 2013, Michael has been the Executive Vice President, Global Head of HR for First Advantage, which is the largest employment screening provider in the world, and now a Silver Lake partner, Silver Lake portfolio company. First Advantage has 26 locations across 14 countries worldwide, conducts about 71 plus million global background screens annually on 18 plus million applicants. As a key member of the executive team, Michael will be visiting us today, sharing some ways that they've been driving exceptional market value here in a very dynamic marketplace. Michael's a frequent speaker and has appeared in the Wall Street Journal and HRO magazine. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Bo. Thank you for the kind words.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's my
Appreciate
pleasure.
It.
Like to dig in. I know folks are been excited. We've received a tremendous response of people interested in the topic today. Unemployment claims came out. We're seeing about 33 million people on the sidelines, hoping to get back in the workplace again. Perhaps we've moved from oh crap, my employees are at home. How do we take care of customers to, oh my, we got to migrate people back to the workplace. And so things are moving. And so I'd like to pull you in and tell us about First Advantage and what specifically do you guys do in the marketplace?
All right. Thanks, Bo. Appreciate it. Thanks a million for having me on this session. First Advantage is the largest background screening company on the planet. We're pretty much everywhere. We've got employees, 26 locations, and we basically do background screening in every country minus a few countries like North Korea and Somalia and places like that. We're not there, understandably so. But we're a large background screening. We do pre-employment, we do residential background screening, and we're a really good bellwether for employment in the marketplace. We get to see the rise and fall before many, quite frankly, and it's an interesting crow's nest to be in. I'm
Mhm.
the CHRO there. I've been here for about 7.5 years now. And ever since we purchased LexisNexis background screening in 2013.
Excellent. So, Michael, when did you maybe realize that this virus may become a global problem and may have very significant business implications?
Well, it was about a week before Thanksgiving, actually, in November. It was one of those late night calls. I was on the head of HR. I was on the phone with our head of HR in China. And Eva and I were chatting. She said, "Oh, by the way, I think we're going to have to close down shortly our Zhuhai and Beijing operations, as well as our Shanghai operations where she was located." And I said, "Well, what's up?" And she said, "Well, there's this virus thing in China right now." And it happened very, very quickly. She heard about it, not from the government, but from some of our folks in those offices. And we began to understand the short-term implications. I don't think we quite understood that this would be on our shores or in Europe as rapidly as we did, as we found out about it at that point in time. But it was through our operations in China that we heard about it at first. We also began to realize that our employees were flying back and forth right up through January. And the virus really didn't care what we thought and what our political boundaries were. So we began to start to connect the dots thereafter.
So, in the early phases of coronavirus, what were your most significant challenges that you were facing, Michael? And what did you guys do to step up and overcome those?
Well, in the beginning phases, when it was still just in China, or at least we thought it was just in China, it was a matter of getting face masks and equipment over there, helping them contain it. And they're our employees, and we did care, and we were concerned about both them and our customers. But as it started to spread and we started to connect the dots, and we found out it was, here in the States and certainly our European and India operations, we began to realize that getting our employees home and working from home was going to be critical. So the first thing I wish we knew about and we understood earlier was to make sure that everyone had a laptop, not a desktop. And in a large data center, certainly in India and in Mumbai, Bangalore, and Manila, we have 2 and 3, and sometimes in some cases 4 shifts with a desktop and they go in and it's multi-shift. You log in and log out of a desktop computer. Well, that became an immediate problem, and that wasn't in our business continuity planning scenario in our scenarios. So the issue was who gets a desktop? How do you get a desktop home? Which employees had at home a better internet service? And who are you going to take that desktop and how do you get it there? So, at midnight in Bangalore in a rickshaw, you've got an employee, a high-rated employee with adequate internet service and a VPN license, and away you go. And you had to get your tech team there, had to get set up. You had to make sure that machine was encrypted because it was off network. You had valuable client data there, and so on and so forth. So it was a Herculean task, actually, and kudos to our IT team and a lot of heroes. They really made this happen. But it was getting PPE to those employees, mostly face masks, making sure that they had a way to be safe. Really start to talk about social distancing. And frankly, just giving them the equipment to work at home. North America was a lot easier. Pretty much everyone has a laptop. And we shifted into work at home in 7-8 days. We were good to go. But there was a bit of a panic and a lot of instability at first because who was going to do what, where. But it came together pretty quickly. It was doing this 24/7 for the first few weeks in Bangalore, Mumbai, and Manila. That was a real challenge.
So, in your business, you're a technology company with call centers, B2B, B2C. We've seen some other businesses that actually the word's not pivot. The word is much more draconian than pivoting. So you guys made a number of changes. And so what are you doing particularly for the future, Michael, as you see continual changes and we're going to have more compliance, more regulation, more protocol? How are you guys going to be making these adjustments in the marketplace?
Well, we live and breathe compliance. So that is a big portion of how we conduct business. Look, we think a couple things are going to happen. First of all, we think that this virus is until there's a vaccination, we believe it'll be around for some time and it'll come and go in waves. At least and we'd rather paint a worse picture and prepare for the worst. And, hopefully things will be better. But we do know that many of our employees are going to have to work at home. If we do open up any of our offices, they will be phased so that a smaller percentage of our employees will be there. We have to make decisions on who will be there, and it's very job dependent. We'll have to worry about things like shift changes and so on and so forth. We're, in India, for example, we are already designing shift changes so that there's an hour gap in between. So, because it'll take longer to get into a facility. We're going to be taking temperatures. We always had very strict security, but now there'll be a physical and a medical aspect to shift changes. Plus, people will have to wash their hands and take other health precautions as well. They won't be sharing desktops anymore. Most of those are gone or going away. And that, was something that we certainly wish we had done earlier.
Excellent. So as your folks are working remotely now, what are you doing particularly that you'd like to share with us, Michael, keeping your team inspired, keeping them engaged, and perhaps more focused than ever with all the distractions that people have in their homes and just turning the TV on right now? So,
yeah, a number of things, and I think it varies from region to region, but in general, there's a performance management aspect to this. Managers really have to manage to end results, not when you're in the office and when you're leaving. And it's just a lot harder to manage that way. And so there's a mind shift that has to occur. So we've been working a lot with managers in terms of performance management metrics. I really want to make sure that our managers feel that people are and believe and have the data to back up that they're as productive as they were beforehand, because we think this is going to go on for some time. I also want to make sure employees understand that they have a certain level of an obligation to be present and focused. And that's easier for some and harder for others. If you've got all kinds of distractions at home, those that you can manage, like turning off the TV or turning off the radio, great. That's sort of an easy to control item. But right now, a lot of people are at home. Their spouse is working. They've got children at home that are doing daytime schooling. It is a bit of a challenge for those folks. They may be among the first to come back to the office, actually, and it may some of them are doing that. On the other hand, some of our employees, managers and leaders in India and the Philippines are thrilled. It was 2 hours drive to the office and 2 hours drive home, and they're far more productive and they love not going into the office. At the same time, they have to spend extra time and effort to manage their employees, to touch base, to connect with them on a daily basis, to make sure they're running focus groups, and to understand the whole person. It's more work to do this remotely, and you have to make sure that you connect often and really have what I would think is a more substantive conversation with your employees. It's a real mind shift.
Yeah, when this all was unfolding, I was thinking that with schools and daycare closed, it's very challenging to get employees to a workplace when their kids aren't at school or daycare. And so now there needs to be schools or summer camps, daycare opening back up to allow employees back to the workplace, right?
That's true, Bo. And in fact, we've created a location by location scorecard. And one of the items in that scorecard, and it's a very data-driven decision-making process that we've created, is whether there's daycare available and what are there children in the house and how does that work? We're not making employment decisions on this, but we certainly are using that as part of the consideration for who comes back to work first. Because we're going to have to make some decision and prioritization. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's pretty much a means test. Those that has the means for daycare can get back to work, and those who don't probably has to keep working from home. Good, great point. Thanks for bringing that up, Michael.
Sure.
So throughout the crisis and the adjustments that you guys have been making, you mentioned that there's been some real Herculean efforts. I got a visual of computers in the rickshaw in India. So I suspect you've identified some heroes here. What's going on with that? It's a term that I see you use occasionally.
I do. I actually was, perhaps I shouldn't have been, but I was surprised at how many people rose to the occasion. And I have to say, we have a great esprit de corps as a result of this. It's not just desktop computers and rickshaws, and there was a lot of that. And believe me, that was not an easy feat, but it's also facilities rooms. It is the everyday person who's doing household cleaning, making sure that light switches are cleansed, desktop computers or keyboards that were multi-shift in the beginning were cleaned. It's having to be able to, and I think you're right. There's a massive pivoting going on right now. We were able to actually mobilize and work at home for the most part. 4,300 employees were able to make that shift in 10 working days. So there were a lot of heroes, almost too many to name, up and down the organization. What we have done is formalize that process a bit, and we've got a nomination process, and that goes to me and then to our CEO. And every Friday, our CEO has a homemade video that he pushes out to the organization, names those heroes, and talks about the business. We have significantly increased the quantity and the quality of communications within the organization since this all started. To reassure them that we've got a great business, and we still do, and we're still growing, and then B, there's a role for everyone, and yeah, we are working from home by and large, and there's been a lot of seismic shifts, but there's also been a lot of ideation surfacing at the same time, and we've learned a lot through this experience. Our heroes have taught us quite a bit.
That's great to hear. The people have stepped up and bridged the gap. Some of the things I learned in preparing for today with you, and just the goal perhaps is not getting people back to the workplace. The goal for the companies is to how do we continue to take care of our customers and keep supply chains open and keep inflationary costs down, which is a concern. And so, moving forward, you'll have some folks who will continue to work from home. So how do you envision the future of getting work done from home, Michael, and staying socially connected? Is that an oxymoron?
No, not at all. I think we have to reinvent it. And obviously, there's no playbook for all of this. So the need to change suddenly was greater than the need to stay the same. So there was no lack of motivation to make the change, and everyone was in on that. So that was a real plus. I think I think there will be many jobs that we do need to have in the office place, in an office environment, under insecure situations with certain types of data. And we have an obligation to our customers in the marketplace to do some of that. But there are many other jobs that can work from home. And there are a couple of really big advantages from a human capital perspective. One is with those jobs, we can get our talent wherever we want to get our talent from. So, if we've got a costly area where there's a lot of talent, we may move some of that talent to a lower cost area, especially if it's remote. It really opens up a whole world of opportunity from an employment perspective. And we have to really start to really think about that. Mobility is really key. So I think that people will have to not just take direction from their leaders, but know how to think on their own and operate a tad bit more independently. And then last but not least, I really like the way we've created an advisory committee, a multidiscipline advisory committee inside the organization. Attorneys, HR folks, operations folks, technologists, so on and so forth. And we are making far better data-driven decisions on how facilities are going to open, when they're going to open. We've become a lot more nimble as an organization because of this process. But I do think that at the end of the day, our employees will be, by and large, far more, and I can't give you a percentage at this point, it's too early in the process, but I would say that a good portion of our professional workforce will, and non-professional workforce will be working remotely in the future. I would not want to be in the commercial real estate business right now.
Yeah, that is certainly a theme that we're hearing. Michael, so what advice do you have for us as business leaders on continuing to execute the business continuity plan? It is still dynamic, it's ever changing.
It is.
And so how would you sum it up with your advice for the BCP?
Well, the first thing I would say is that, just a reminder to everyone, what you do now will become your employer brand in the future. It really is important that you stay focused on the here and now and remember what your mission is. And it's to both keep your employees safe to the degree you possibly can, and to keep that business going. And it's sometimes those objectives are not aligned with each other. And you really do have to surface those objectives. And especially when they conflict with each other, you have to have a team of professionals inside the organization that can make a best possible decision as you move forward. So that's number one. Number two, our business continuity plan, we had them, they were paper-based, they were sitting on the shelf, but real life is always different. And we've learned an awful lot about taking those plans seriously. I think we've done a phenomenal job as an organization moving forward, but I would go back and revisit those plans and take them extraordinarily serious, take them very seriously. And then the biggest piece is, again, that multidisciplinary team. It's been a lifesaver for us. We've been able to make quality decisions, hear everyone out, and we've been able to move a lot quicker with what I believe is less risk at the end of the day.
In a simplistic way, it reminds me of the old days when I was coming up in manufacturing. It was always this battle of production versus quality.
Sure.
And so now we've got, how do we take care of customers and keep our profits up? And how do we do that in a very, very safe way to where our employees feel they're valued and cared for and protected, right?
You also have to think about what is the workplace. For our account managers who were used to going to QBRs every month and getting on a plane 2, 3, 4 times a week, well, that's not possible anymore. So how do we keep our employees or account managers plugged into their accounts? By the way, our customers don't want us showing up at their front door right now either. Mm-hmm. So we've had to reinvent what the workplace looks like, and some of it will be at home, some of it will be in the workplace, and eventually, I believe, we'll be back on airplanes, but not to the degree that we are now or were.
So through this experiment, if you will, Michael, have you guys found a silver lining? And if you have, how may we apply some of these key learnings?
Well, lots of silver lining in this dark cloud. I think the first and foremost is that transparency and communication is really key. Now, I'm the head of human resources, so when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So my perspective is through people, but employee engagement, I don't think could be more critical now. You've got to develop trust and recognize those employees, those people who have become the informal heroes in the organization. Employee recognition really counts. One, two, there's a great number of people that just not only rose to the occasion, but reached out to make sure that these are team leaders in Bangalore, Mumbai, and all around the world who wanted to make sure that their employees' families were safe, that they had access to food, how was their internet connection? I mean, a lot of the basics. And I have to tell you, there was the esprit de corps, the connectivity between employees actually spun up. And we're just beginning to figure out how to measure that through pulse surveys, but we really are seeing that that's occurring. And those are great silver linings. Our customers have been understanding and in many cases forgiving as we are with them and vice versa. So there's been just a what I would consider a new and better esprit de corps inside the organization.
Yeah, I think some of us as people and companies have really reconnected with our purpose. And again, the purpose of First Advantage is you guys are getting people into jobs in the marketplace, and you're keeping workplaces safer with your testing.
We've helped to hire more than 1 million people in the last few months. And that's a big number. We feel very proud about that. And you're right, Bo, that purpose is important, especially when you're sitting at home, you're working 8-10 hours a day, you're plugging away, and some of it can be quite monotonous at times. And knowing that there's a purpose in a tough time it's a good feeling.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Michael. We are running in a good time for schedule. Looks like lots of time for some questions. We'll look at our chat box, take a look at our next slide, and open it up.
Oh yeah, some countries are getting back to work sooner than others. Share why. So I guess the question is, some countries are getting back to work sooner than others. Can you share why you think that is happening? I think there's 3 answers. It's testing, testing, and testing. In fact, really, what we have found out, certainly in Germany, China, South Korea, without a doubt, is that they had a testing protocol, access to tests, COVID-19 tests, which some of them have false positives. There's risk there for sure, but when people were found to not have the virus or have presumably some immunity to it, then they were allowed back into the workplace, and that made a world of a difference. I think it's more than just being medically sound. It also gave our employees the confidence that it's a relatively safe place, and employee confidence is really central to this as well.
Yeah, great question, great response, Michael. Thank you for that. Someone else?
Any thoughts on Michael, thanks for the update today. Any thoughts on employees with underlying health issues? How will return to office work for that group? To be honest with you, it's Jason, it's a really good question, and we don't have an answer quite yet. We're working with our chief medical review officer on this issue, and there obviously has to be in the US, it has to be HIPAA approved, and we have to have a way to have that conversation with our employees. There may be a combination of extending their work at home, provided it's possible. Right now, everyone's working from home right now. So we'll have to have some form of exclusion so they can continue to work at home if that's possible. Otherwise, we'll end up moving to a PTO or a short-term STD approach to it. But I don't really think we have an answer to that. And I'd certainly be happy to share it with you once we do. That's one of the issues that we're working through right now. Let's look at the next one. If you had an opportunity to redo any process during the COVID-19 aftermath, what would that be? Well, we would have had laptops for everybody right away. And we would have had a plan for what jobs are critical and what jobs can we deploy working remotely at home versus what jobs can't you. We've got a lot of work to catch up on that, and we're working through that now. But the single biggest issue for us was making sure that people are mobile and have laptops. Mm-hmm. Now we're in a data management information services environment, so those are, that's a core tool to our business. Where do you see the future change management initiatives taking priority in organizations? Do you think it varies by location and or industry? Well, I would imagine it does vary by location and or industry. But I think that we have to really understand what it is to work remotely without giving up the sense of community and without that connectivity that employees really need, so that we can continue to have that esprit de corps and just general sharing of ideas as we move forward. And I think that we're in the nascent stages of doing this.
I think next question is more of where do you see future change management initiatives taking priority in organizations? Do you think it varies by location and or industry, more change management initiatives?
Yeah, I think that it certainly depends. I mean, we're a global organization, and I think that large BPO environments in, South Asia and the Philippines are going to be very different than a corporate environment or a marketing environment. One, but I think there'll be a lot of focus on collaboration. I think there'll be a tremendous amount of focus on the focus. I think much of the change management initiatives will remain the same. I think we will focus on remote training and development, and I think that's going to be key as we move forward as well. Technical training and development, but online.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've seen some folks really pivot to do their onboarding online, which is a new advantage if you can do your onboarding online. Another question, during this, have you discovered changes you want to make to your business model, not about working remotely, but an area to better address changed customer needs? So in other words, are you seeing your customers pivot and have some changes coming up that's going to affect your business and your business model?
Yeah, we have. I think that certainly some of our customers are looking for, for example, virtual drug testing. Okay, we've come up with a way. We've had a number of requests to do drug testing virtually. They don't want their prospective employees or their candidates to go into a traditional drug screening environment. And we've developed technology to augment that significantly. And there's probably other tools. I know there's other tools and other products in the waiting that will certainly save time and money and help to onboard employees quicker.
Michael, you shared that new remote testing. I'm fascinated by it. Share it with the group here a little bit, how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the product expert, but here's what basically happens. Typically, a very small percentage of candidates, depends on the industry, obviously, fail their drug screening test. And again, it really does vary by industry, but typically the majority of those candidates are past the screen. But it does require them to go into a drug screening environment, typically a lab environment. But we've developed a tool where an employee or prospective employee candidate will get on Zoom, be able to touch an application to their tongue, put it back in a vial. It turns one of two colors. If it's the right color, they're free to go on to the next phase of background screening. If not, they need to go to a lab to have a proper test. So this will basically tell you whether there's any one of the panels that are in there, the typically 5 or 7 panel test. So the vast majority for lower cost are able to pass the test quicker, faster, at lower cost. But it's virtual, and we use Zoom or any other video technology. And typically you'd have to have an HR person at the other end, or somebody who's been assigned as a trustworthy resource inside the organization.
Okay, we've got a few more minutes left. We've got an economics question here if you want to tackle. It was announced that Europe may be about to experience a very significant depression that perhaps is unprecedented. How might you envision Europe's economy headed to a depression affecting the U.S. market or U.S. businesses?
Well, I think a lot depends on vaccination, right? If the vaccines are launched sooner than later, and we can give employers the confidence to get back to business, I think it would be a wonderful and fast solution, but it may take up to a year. From what I've been reading, and I'm reading the same articles and journals that you all are as well. I'm hopeful that if you compare this to, and again, I'm not an economist, but if you compare this to 1929, the speed of everything is faster. So while we may go into a deeper, deep, whether it becomes classified as a formal depression, I'm hopeful that with the vaccine, with a vaccine or a number of vaccines, we'll be able to get out of it as quickly as we got into it. Mm-hmm. But I think that we ought to be prepared for a significant downturn, mm-hmm. And also pivot your client base or your customer base to those organizations that are growing in this more remote marketplace. I think it's the only way to move forward.
We'll yet to be determined the impacts, but I've been thinking in some way it may be, North Carolina lost agriculture jobs, lost furniture jobs, textile jobs. And so we had a lot of great people on the sidelines that were displaced. And so what we're seeing now, and you look at NASDAQ is almost back to where it was. So technology, et cetera, software, e-commerce companies are really coming out of this in pretty good shape. And so the big downside of perhaps displaced workers, retail, hospitality, et cetera, is going to be tough to get those folks back to work, right?
It absolutely will be. And I think there'll have to be significant retraining. And honestly, we're just going to have to watch the marketplace. I think there's a lot of creativity, untapped creativity out there as well.
Yes.
So, and this is also new that it's going to take some time to retool. And I think a lot of it's going to be driven by, private industry, quite frankly. And I do think that we need to find better ways to create, idea generation. I mean, every one of us could be, in a certain sense, far more creative and drive significant outcomes. And maybe to an earlier question that I saw before, but change management, I think, is also got to focus on on creativity and driving commercially viable results earlier, quicker, and in ways we never considered before.
We'll squeeze one more in. How do you effectively share best practices from remote locations to the rest of the entity? I think you touched on this, some things you and your CEO and your hero identification. So share with that a little more.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we've got this advisory committee, which in a certain sense has become a clearinghouse for best practices. So what may be happening in Manila, we can share with Atlanta or with our Bolingbrook office or elsewhere. That multidisciplinary advisory committee has really become the clearinghouse at this point in time. It may morph into something broader, and then we'll either publish it internally. Typically, the HR function gets to share that and pushes it out. Or if it's really significant, a great idea, and we want to attribute a hero, Scott, our CEO, will announce it. He does a great job, and he's great in front of a camera, and he's part of the reason why we're doing so well now.
Okay, maybe we can ask Lauren, is it possible to pull up the tips and the checklist? We'll let folks know that if you'll email us over working remotely at humancs.com, we'll be sure to attach a copy of the tips and checklist that Michael has shared. It's a large menu that some of these areas you may not have to consider in your industry, in your workplace, but it's fairly comprehensive. So be happy to attach that and send that your way. So it's labeled guiding principles for both the strategic and tactical recovery efforts, safety, compliance, collaboration, and agility. So a little peek at a fairly exhaustive list of things in the workplace that many of us have really never thought about. I know in our offices here in North Carolina, there's daily janitorial folks coming in with some new special sanitizers and some cleaning. So I've seen it in our own workplace here, stepping up and doing some things we haven't done before. So Michael, we are so glad that you could join us. I'm sure there's a lot of cogs that are clicking out there and some ideas that you've shared with us. Thank you for sharing your time and wisdom, expertise, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
My pleasure. You guys are doing great work. I appreciate it. And again, just ping me if you like to know more or I can be of any help. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Yes.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, staff at Human Capital Solutions, for another successful segment of Human Capital Matters.